Okay. Gut. Salam. I'd like to greet you my own way, of course, blah, blah, and have you here, ladies and gentlemen. It's kind of keynote-like to warm you up, massage your ears for what's coming next or before, afterwards. I'd like to also express my fears, my feelings to you, and rigorously kind of locate some horror stories and taste also some fears, which kind of weird and yeah. I have to go very densely and shortly through a series of thinking, so need your absolute focus and attention here because it's going to be fast forwarded a little bit. First of all, before I start to the taste of fear, is that let's clear something out. That first of all, it's the superego who is going to ask you to tolerate what you're fearing, and at the moment of when the superego is installed, that's precisely when the child turns to an adult. And we're going to talk a lot about child tonight. And this cut, this slash, is the installation and the setup of the superego and the tolerating of what you fear, not only liking it and also putting your hand and wanting more of it, and changing your taste. I'm also thinking about what's going to happen to the sleepwalker in the time of the war, because many of the people I know, they are not people who have their absolute control over their trajectory or their gun power, and this is all also problematic. So to bring my own kind of locations here. First of all, I'd like to start with a very important kind of fear, the fear of God, and the fear of us, from the people who fear God, kind of. And I'm not going to through all the stories without the which God, and how is it working. I'm interested in the madness when the fear of the wrath of God becomes itself the wrath in you itself. So you become the wrath instead of becoming the afraid being. You turn to this to the wrath. And also another footnote here, is the fear of God actually the hatred of evil. Also, I'm kind of afraid of this, and fearing that you might offend someone that you love. And but the God as the big one, as this huge thing, and going to I would like to bring that immediately to the little ones, and because the child is, for us, is a generative machine of the fear, and the moment when we stop fearing, we are announced as the adult. And I'm not talking about the biological child. Of course, it's a scared being. It's a state of, it's the threatened being as the child. And to elicit what I mean by the child. Okay, you all know the story of the Lord of the Flies. I don't like it really, the book, but I'm interested in really the very last page, where after page after page, rampage of children getting wild, brutal, native, going through to this extremely savage scenery. The very last page, which is something is interesting, starts. Suddenly the story is over, and that's exactly when this officer enters the island and sees the wild children hunting another children, and says, "Okay, what the hell is going on here? You're playing war game or something?" And I'm interested in what happened in the body of those children. It's a cringe, or in Deutsch zusammenschrecken. It's like it's a in Persisch انقباض غیر عادی چابلوسانه means a kind of involuntary contradiction of your muscles and kind of flattering the arrival of something I want to call it authority. So the child, the muscles of the child, they go in and they laugh kind of, and they tighten a little bit. And this submission and this fear that arrives at the last page. And my argument is that nobody coming to the island, there is no officer coming. It's the enigmatic figure of the authority, which rise up precisely because of this notion of childhood that I'm talking about. So what the child has to do with all this story? Everything, because it's the a child is a kind of a spell. Then when you spend it, this comes this authority figure which is going to settle down, save you, and bring you to safety, and ends the child who's threatened by annihilation. And this is the kind of a poster we see everything. So be careful, just be careful with that, with this birth of this of militant father, which is going to bring the child to bed or something like that. But moving from that, there's another acute form of transformation between this immediate generative form of figurative power to something which I call bureaucracy, which is which I have talked about it before, but here, if I just open up clearly, what I mean by bureaucracy is an architectural term. And by that I mean, first of all, bureaucracy is never happy to see you. You're always, another one, we have to go through all the paperwork. So it deals with something which has a momentum, random, chaotic velocity that comes and has to go through a process and slow down into the grid. And it's super architectural. It's not physical, but it finds itself in other systematic preparation in the birth of the civilization and city. And I associate it usually for my kind of play with labyrinth. And I think labyrinth is architecture at its best, and it's actually super not livable. But for me, it helped me to think about from what comes from the horizon, from the distance, the menace that is arriving, and has to go through the labyrinth and be delayed until it comes to the center. And okay, in the center there is another figure which I won't go to it. But this cityscape rather than the landscape, because land and the rural aspect associated with it brings to mind a kind of strangeness that is coming from the far, coming from behind the mountains to me, coming from the horizon, small first and gets bigger, and now I see the stranger. But in the cityscape, it doesn't work like that. It's your next room, and it has a certain another kind of virtuality, because the virtual originates on the distance when you perceive, and perception originates in the distance, and that's the virtuality of the perception, and has to do all with the fear that we are talking about. Because you see something from far, you cannot do anything. You don't have physical, you don't have tactile interaction with it, and then takes time, and things happen inside your brain, or you can choose to take action, move, go on, interact with the event or not. But what if it's on your screen? You can't do anything about it. One of the masters of labyrinth building is a character from 1001 Night. You know, the Arabic, Iranian, Indian epic of the stories, Shahrazad. I hope you know you know her. She's the protagonist in the beginning of the story. Huge, thousands of pages, and she's the one who is telling all the stories. And I'm seeing her as a labyrinth builder. And why? Because she's on a death row, and her issue is delay. And okay, of course, if you're a musician, the delay effect, it's for you extremely significant and meaningful. And delay has everything to do with the survival. Because if you can just delay enough the sword or the guillotine or whatever that is coming, just enough, just a little bit more. And when we think there's just microscope left, more, a little bit more, and then the DNA breaks down and a mutation happens. And according to the 1001 Night, if you just delay enough, you might marry the cruel prince. Anyway, her creation, her design. By the way, I'm also interested in how old is Shahrazad? Is he a child? And we don't know. But anyway, her story is also the story of defeat. It is extremely important that we talk about defeat. What happens, defeat? Okay, you won the war. Okay, we won the defeat. And what's going on now? And I have for you thousands of years of history of the folks that they haven't accepted defeat. But that's another story. Go back to the Shahrazad. Shahrazad is a domestic creature. Her name in Persian literally means urbanite, someone who's born in the city. But her problem and her story is a domestic one. Her audience is the husband / sheikh / cruel prince / serial psychopath killer, actually. So which she was constantly telling this, and I think I don't know about tonight, but bringing an object that it's hardly invokes and the story comes to an end, and I wonder what kind of stories can bring in a space of hesitation, because what this 1001 Night wants to urgently tell us is about the character of the prince, which is filled with rage, but that's another story. Her private insecurity and her architectural activity of creating a labyrinthine space by bringing all the ghosts, by calling all the stories from the past. She calls everything from the Mesopotamian history of narratives, and to create these edges that you want to see what's on the edge, and you have to go and go again and again, and that's her strategy. And I like you to also distinguish between seducing or seduction, because she's not doing. Also distinguish between the rhetoric of persuasion, because she's also not doing that. And this is my theory. She changes a rhythm of someone else's story. What is the story of the prince, of this cruel prince? We don't know what is his story, but she manages to change its rhythm. My last point on the map is is another story from the Kelilo Demne. Fantastic work. Not well written enough here. Everyone from the Arabic or Iranian speaking countries has read it in their school, in the Kunsthochschule, and it's one of my favorite. I can't get enough of it. I just want to tell a small story from this, and the story goes as this. It's a parable. It's an animal parable. Okay, so once upon a time, there is a fox in the jungle, happily going after, minding his own business, and suddenly he sees that all the animals are escaping in one direction. So, and then he recognizes that there is a horrible, horrifying sound from a point that they are escaping from. What he does is that in his foxness, he goes to the sound. You can imagine it's full amplified, it's pure affect. It's coming, this wavelength forms coming to you, the air, the jungle, animals scared with eyes escaping. And the fox goes and puts his hand in the source of the sound, in the source code. And he finds out that it's just fat. It's an animal skin. It's a dead animal skin attached to a piece of branch, and the wind is playing it like a drum. So it's a random structure by nature. We don't know how it's created, but it's an accidental horror. So, and the moment when we go through it, for all that folk which are escaping from it, it's essential. And I'm thinking here how the essential rise from the accidental, and the moment the hands goes to it, poof, it goes again, goes back to the ground again. We are on the milieu of the accidental, but I don't see the fox as brave necessarily. It's because of many things. First of all, he dismisses the fat immediately. He goes like, it's just fat. There's no meat. I wanted meat. So he goes away and he probably destroys this automatic noise generating machine. But if I were the fox, I would just pause and see what's the source code is made of, and I would also put another hand to it, because the fox hand doesn't go like the transcendenting finger of the Michelangelo's Adam touching the God or the source. It's the animal paw which goes like this, and it goes for the fat, and it goes multiply. It's digging. It's different than this. Anyway, I like to also with that encourage you to think about the waste in your work, or the fat, or according to the story, charbui, which different than the muscle. And if you're working with noise generating machines, what is the muscle and the fat or the waste in your work? And that's kind of it. Okay, thank you.